Greetings, traveler.
Hey everyone, we've got a big patch with lots of changes. Let's dive right in. First up, we have no more double demolisher. This is mainly a change that happened because the game just starts being very slow once you have a lot of magnetic stacks, and then you triple, and then you triple again, and you have all the gold in the world, and you know, it takes forever to get your turn, but it also affects other people in the lobby. If somebody's playing double demo, other people's game starts slowing down. So that's just generally a performance type thing where double demo was removed because of that, not necessarily balance changes. Although it's a very good card if you get it online. Then we have Macaw going from tier 3 to tier 4. That also is not that big of a surprise. A lot of builds use Macaw right now. Death Rattles are strong. Titus is super popular. So this is just a little bit of a nudge to turn those Death Rattle comms down a little bit. Then Broodmother going from tier 4 to tier 5. That is also no surprise. We have Carapace Dragons being very strong right now, if not the strongest comp in the game. The reason why it's so unbelievably good is you get a lot of stats on your Carapace with Friendly Geist, and then obviously you have your Carapace, which gives you a lot of the spells in your hand. And that's already good if you play it without dragons. But the reason why it's so good with dragons is that the interaction with Titus is incredibly favorable. So first of all, Broodmother spawns taunted Twilight Hatchlings, which means that your Titus is generally not getting sniped, except, you know, some kind of Sindore or Nuzao, right? But most combats, your Titus stays alive, so that's already a huge plus. It spawns taunts. But the other one is that the Hatchling will attack, the Whelp will attack, die, generally speaking, because your Carapace doesn't give you that much health, just damage. And then the next one spawns and attacks, and then the next one spawns and attacks. Compare that to, say, skeletons from like a caretaker that spawn. You just don't have enough board space, and then everything that doesn't spawn goes to waste. But with the dragon, it's not the case. So that's why it's so unbelievably strong. You get all the hatchling value, and the next one dies, and then you get all that value, and then the next one dies and get all that value. So it's very, very hard to outstat this composition, because it's not uncommon for these whelps to deal 500, 600, 700 damage each. If you spawn like 20 of those, I mean, you're not gonna tank that, right? So very, very strong if you combine this with a golden Titus. So we see the nerf here going to tier 5. Also a bit harder to use eyes on this. Eyes is not so good on this to make it golden to get the effect, but it's great because now you can run 3 quite easily. So you can just eyes 1 and then play 2 more. So you can't do that anymore either. So that's another consequence of moving this to 5. Stun Drake gets buffed, but it's not a real buff. I would say the reason why Stun Drake is good is people pivot into it. So the Stun Drake is immediately huge. So it doesn't really matter if it's like 9 or 14 attack. Because you might say, well, Stun Drake getting buffed, this thing is crazy. At least, you know, in high MMR, this is quite a common endgame card. But it's pretty weak when you pick it up and you're trying to play it. You know, I guess the way the devs had intended to, the way how high level players play Stun Drake is you just like Mutinous on top of the Stun Drake. So you make like an Urzel, a Felbor, or, you know, random pirates with Menagerie, and then you just Mutinous all your stats on top of Stun Drake. So for that, it doesn't matter if it's a 9 or 14. But if you want to play like actual dragons in the mid game, so you have that tier 5 dragon that gives you dragon stats every time a dragon attacks. You put a Stun Drake next to it, you play a Poet next to the Stun Drake, you slowly scale your Stun Drake. Then yeah, this is kind of nice, right? It goes from 9 to 14, so when you put it on your board, it's immediately more impactful. So this is fine. I wouldn't say this is like, oh my god, they're buffing Stun Drake. Then Acid Rain. This thing was refreshed 3 times, now it's refreshed 4 times, and after the patch, it's refreshed 5 times. So I don't think this makes it bad. Which is crazy. It's just so easy to rack up stats on the right side of your tavern. You have interactions like, you know, just Revenant with a lot of money, Revenant with Bran, Revenant with Tethys, Revenant with Shipman. So as long as you can spend enough money, your right side will get huge. And generally speaking, in those lobbies, it's not that hard to spend a lot of money. But you can also use something like Rylak with Reborn and then an Engine Blazer next to it. So it's not uncommon to have 200, 300, 400, sometimes 500 stats on the right side minion. So if I have to roll 5 times to add a couple hundred stats to my minion, that's probably still going to be fine. Now, again, it does hurt the comp, right? The same way how moving it from 3 to 4 hurt the comp, right? It's a little bit more likely that you die in the beginning when you're trying to get your Acid Rain online. But once your engine is fully online, fully flowing, you have the money, you have the brand, you have the Revenant, then it's fine. You can just keep rolling anyway. You got so much money. So I don't think this is suddenly the end of Acid Rainfall, but it is a dominant comp right now. So I do agree that a nerf is in order, but it still remains to be seen how impactful it is. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe suddenly Acid Rainfall is like, you know, very, very weak, but I don't think so. I think we're still going to be able to play this. Then Apex's Guardian is coming back, but instead of magnetizing to 2, it's going to magnetize to 1. So this is the same where it went from 3 to 2 to 1. However, it's also going to be a rally effect now. So I do like that, because if you just make it magnetize 1, it does feel bad, and it's like, oh, I get to make one big mech essentially, or you can have 2 separate mechs and then try to split the stats between them. But making it rally makes it so that when you first pick up the Apex's Guardian, it doesn't feel so bad. You can put it in the front. If it attacks, you get a magnetization, and if it then also dies afterwards, you get it. Now, the rally effect does not get doubled by Titus, but it would be with a Deus. So still very strong with Deus. The main reason why Apexis was so good, I would say, is a lot of time warps. So we had, you know, Probius and the Time Warp Sneed Buddy. Those were very, very good with this. Now, I don't think Time Warp Sneed Buddy is in anymore, and I think they're also removing Probius. We're going to cover that later. So I don't think this is necessarily like, oh, Apex is still broken. Still, we have to play it, we have to see. But it's good that mechs have a little bit something to play for an end game. Right now, you essentially just played Zarina. Very, very strong in the mid game, and sometimes you could win a lobby, but it was rare. So overall, good that, you know, we have an end game mech again. Speaking of end game mechs, this is not it. All right. Yeah, I mean, what can I say? At the end of your turn, give your minions 4/4 for each magnetization they have instead of 3/3. That doesn't matter unless you have magnetizations, and there is no clean way to add magnetizations to your board, so the card doesn't really fit. So I would say the only way you can play this is with Time Warp Electron. If you get Time Warp Electron, that is a consistent way to get a lot of magnetics on your board. Every time you cast 2 spells, he puts 4/4 magnetic on your boards. So that is an option. But other than that, are you really just gonna like farm volumizers and put them like manually 1 by 1 on your board, and then I guess it could happen, but almost always too slow, too clunky, not strong enough. Profound Thinker is getting changed. First of all, it's going from a 4/4 to a 2/3, which is fair because this card is broken. Like if you go 3-on-3 and you pick up a pair of these, oh my god, you're strong. That's so good. So 2/3 is a more fair stat line. Now, they also made a text change so that when you have a Thrasher on your board, it counts as the Thinker casting the spell, not you casting the spell. So the Thrasher does not regain shield or venom during combat, which was a change that was long overdue, because that was a very, you know, pun intended, toxic combo where you just taunted 2 Thrashers, you put some Thinkers in the front, or you have like 2 Bluesy Sirens, and the shield on the Thrasher just keeps coming back. You can counter it, you could play Leroy, you could play Wind Fury, but a lot of the time you just don't have those cards on hand, and you might have a really cool game and you just die because some guy has 2 Taunted Thrashers and, you know, he could kill like 8 of your units or something with like 2 cards. It's kind of crazy. So yeah, I do like that change. In that same vein, Bluesy Siren, same thing here. No actual change to the card. It's still an 8/8. It still puts 2/3 deep blues on, but it counts as the Bluesy casting it instead of you, so no more Thrasher reset. Lord of Gains going from 1/1 to 2/1, which is a step in the right direction, but he still does not buff himself, which to me is crazy. Because I've tried it a few times, I've had a Lord of Gains on my board here and there. My god, is that slow? It also spreads the buffs out, which is not in your favor. Generally for endgame, you want to play compositions that can concentrate stats. So Acid Rain will be the polar opposite of this, where, you know, it scales 1 or 2 guys and you get huge. And then you can add a lot of tech support. So you can add like a Cleave to kill some poisons at Leroy. You can add your own, like maybe Venomous Minion or, you know, a Heroic Underdog. But with Slither Spear, you have to buff your whole board. the buff is not that great. You have to constantly invest money into buying spells and cycling them. So at least in my lobbies, when I'm playing this, I'm just like, this can never compete. And I don't think 2-1 suddenly changes that. I think you need to have some really, really strong innate spell generation. And I guess we just don't have that much of that right now. So you need to have something like that golden tier 4 Naga that would then give you 2 tavern spells every turn. And that's already kind of nice. And maybe with like a golden Drakari on the board, so it triples the Lord of Gain effects. But that's a lot of work, and I don't see that happening. So yeah, still not a huge fan of this card. Peggy gets changed to +2/+1, and then a stat change, but that's totally fine. Like, that's definitely a buff, right? You're totally fine having a 2/1 that buffs 2/1 instead of a 3/2 that buffs 1/1. I think that's fair, yeah. It's kind of tough to make Peggy work. You need to have something like an Industrious Deckhand on your board early, so you're guaranteed to add some cards to your hand. Or maybe you have River Skipper on the board and it's easy to cycle cards and cards pop into your hand all the time. Most of the time I'm not super happy to put a Peggy on my board, and maybe this change does make it more appealing, at least early on tier 3 to pick it up. And then we have Underhanded Dealer, which is a very, very similar change to the Peggy. It's also a bit of a stat nerf, but then an effect buff, so overall definitely a buff. You get +1/+2. I would say that I picked up Dealer a little bit more than Peggy, simply because the Dealer works on its own. So every time you gain a gold, gain 1/2. Now it is a little harder to gain gold compared to adding cards to the hand, generally speaking. But the fact that you don't need another pirate on your board for it to work makes it quite nice. And then once you are online, and again, if you have River Skipper, the card becomes a lot better because it's easier to just cycle stuff. So yeah, I do like these 2 buffs, because I do like playing pirates in mid game, and this makes it a little easier. The rest gets changed from 1/1 to 2/1. I don't think that matters too much. I think you sometimes play some Drust for a little bit and then you sell it. I think most of the time when you play pirates, you play it for the economy engine, and I don't think that's necessarily a terrible thing, because you hear this a lot, like, oh, pirates are so bad, you can't play pure pirates. But pirates have by far the best economy engine in the game, right? They have Tethys, they have Shipman. These 2 cards alone on your board are just amazing gold generation. So the fact that you then have to make an effort to find a way to use that money to scale in a different type, to me, is not such a bad idea. Like, if you make the pirate scaling like very, very strong, I think it just makes pirates like really dominant, where they have the best economy in the game, and then they also have like really, really good scaling to use that. So I see that a lot where people say like, oh my god, like they got above pirates, or like, I actually don't mind that, right? Because right now you can play pirates and then put a Weaver on your board, and you have so many spells that you're cycling, and then that Weaver will give all your Undead so much attack, and then just in the late game you swap Undead. Same thing with Smudger. You can put a Smudger on your board, cycle a bunch of gem buffs, and now you're buffing a lot with your gems. Same thing with Evoker. You can put an Evoker on your board, cycle a lot of spells. Now all your dragons get a lot of stats. Later in the game you just swap in a Stun Drake and a Poet, buff your Stun Drake like that. So I actually don't hate that. So I don't think this changes too much for how we play pirates, but it means that if you do get a Drust, and if you high roll it, you can play it, right? You get a lot of Drusts, or you have a lot of golden cards. But if you play it for a little bit, and then you can still swap it out for one of the better scaling engines. Because that is one thing that pirates don't do, which I think is fine. They don't scale their scaling. So all the things I talked about, the plus attack on Undead is not something that's necessarily scales, because you still only get +2 attack, +2 attack, +2 attack. But it's on everywhere in the future, so you can very easily build your board later with huge attack Undead, right? Whereas the pirate buff, if you sell a minion, the pirate buff is gone. So that's something. But with the Smudger, for instance, your scaling keeps getting better, because you can constantly buff your gems, so that when you do cycle spells with Smudger, you're getting more and more and more stats per spell cycled, whereas with the Drust, it will stay roughly the same every time you cycle a pirate. Speaking of gems, we got Moonbacon going from tier 3 to tier 2. When we have seen that in the past, that suddenly does help Quills a lot, because now it is so much easier to pick up gem buffs on tier 2. That being said, I do think last time we had tier 4 Quills available when this was the case. So you could play Bristler, I believe that was, with Prophet, and then you just cycled a bunch of Quills. You stayed on tier 4, made a huge Bristler, and then used Macaw to summon a bunch of big golems. That's not in the game right now, so I don't think it's going to have the same effect where Jazzer is suddenly like, wow, let's just force Quills. But it's a nice change, right? It's a lot easier now to get some early gem buffs. Bonker is still no Wind Fury, which I don't know why that's not the case, why that would be too broken, but it just plays 2 blood gems, which is fine, right? So in a way, early on, it's a buff. Early on, it's a buff because you don't have to Wind Fury to play 2 blood gems. Later on, it's a bit of a nerf because when you have the rally Quillbore on your board, you do like Wind Fury Quills because then you get double proc. Here he is, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Bloodsnout Warlord, not quite, but he now plays 3 blood gems. So they are making an effort, right? Like, people are not playing Quills are not that strong. We have the Jazzer going to tier 2, we got the Bonker in the mid game buffing 2 gems. Now we have your end game buffing engine also giving 3 gems. So this could start adding up to where you can catch some people off guard. If you have like 2 early Bloodsnout Warlords and you've played a few Jazzers, suddenly those are real buffs to your board, right? So I think you can still really catch people off guard with this. I do think for the end game, because you don't have something like Gem Smuggler, it's still hard to go full end game Quills, except for that Smudger build I talked about, where you have the Visionary Shipman to generate a lot of spells, and then you have Smudger, and then you use the spells to buff your board, and you have a lot of money, and you can cycle gem buffs, and so on and so on. Plankwalker goes from 2-2 to 2-1. That is long overdue, I would say. This card is very, very, very good, and I think even after this nerf, it is very good. So, Plankwalker, it's easy to make it golden because you have this tier 5 pirate that makes a tier 4 pirate or below golden. So, even if you don't have it golden, one spell is now +6/+3 to your board. That is a little bit more in line with Hooktail, where Hooktail buffs your entire board, but this is still better. So, a better Hooktail is still quite good. Oh yeah, very, very happy to still play this card. But definitely a just nerf, justified for sure. Beatboxer is now back as a 7-drop, so that is to replace the double demo. I don't know if this is gonna have that much impact. I think if you have a really good setup, you could stack with a Cordotron again to get a lot of money. That seems harder to do. If you have Apexes on your board, then sure, right? Beatboxer definitely ramps up your scaling a ton, but you can get unlucky where your magnetizations go on the Beatboxer instead, and then you don't get the effect. So I think it's fine for now, right? I think the mid-season is probably pretty close, because mid-season usually happens 2 months into a season, and I think we're already roughly there, so I think it's going to be a bit of a longer season. So I think this is a bit more of a placeholder until we have mid-season, where it's just like, okay, double demo is crashing the game, let's swap it out, let's put a different mech in place. So in the right circumstance, yeah, you can be happy to have the Beatboxer, but I think the double demo is obviously like a lot stronger. Last one standing goes from 9 to 12. That's a lot, but yeah, the issue is you get it too late in the game to be super happy with it. So you have to get really lucky and get this early on, but that's almost always like an evolve or something with the Thorim buddy. Even Thorim taking this usually doesn't get it in time. So the issue is it doesn't do enough for how late you get it in the game. At that stage of the game, it's much, much, much better to have Zargira or Sanders and use that to create infinite gold, where you can use a Sanders on a Brand or a Tethys or a Shipman. You can use Zargira to, again, make golden copies of all those cards. You can even golden a minion in the shop with Golden Touch and then copy it with Zargira. So the options are just so much better. So this is like very generic stats, and that's generally not good enough on turn 9, which is where you get it with the Greater Time Warp. Kodo gets double the stats, 1632, and that's probably not relevant. I don't know. Kodo is really tough. So I have been beaten by a Kodo once, I think, where someone had a huge Kodo and that they did like Terran hero power to copy their Kodo because it had Reborn, and then it came back, and then it was just like, yeah, it was weird. Or maybe it was like a Vandar hero power copying the Kodo. I can't remember, but yeah, suddenly when you have a lot of Kodos and then they stack, yeah, that's pretty silly. But this seems so hard to set up. So maybe, let me know in the comments if you guys have had some good Kodo games. But every time I see this, I just like, oh, this is such a headache. Like, how do I make this big and then build my board and then not die in the same time? So I'm not sure this is going to change too much. Champion of Sargeras, 4/4 to 5/5. Sure, right? You sometimes take this if you're already leading demons and you need a shop buff. Works with Macaw. So if you do get it early on Thorim and you already have Macaw, the beauty on Thorim is you're going to get it, so you can pick up the Macaw early on, and then when your hero power procs, you have the Sargeras, so that does work. So there's definitely some room for it, but generally speaking, not that insane of a 7-drop. Carapace going from 4 to 5, probably one of the most impactful changes here. One of the problems with the Carapace comp is that it was extremely safe. You could just camp on tier 4 for a while. Geist was on tier 4, Carapace was on tier 4, Broodmother was on tier 4, so you just camp on 4. If you get lucky, you triple the Carapace into a Titus, and then like, oh, okay, my comp is just done. So this just makes it very, very safe to go for, which meant a lot of people went for it. So it was not uncommon in an Undead Dragon lobby to have 5 or 6 opponents, or maybe even 7, playing the Carapace Dragon comp. So yeah, it got to a point where it's very silly, very oppressive. So very good that we see this. Makes it much harder to triple, makes it much harder to get early. So fair nerf, definitely deserved. Then we have some buddy changes. This is purely just for ETC, and I think that's a good thing because ETC was really good. Because the reason why it's so good is that ETC used to have to go 3-on-3, so tier 3 on turn 3, to have access to a lot of the good buddies. So the ones displayed here, getting the Rhino, getting the KT, getting the Epic Egg, Scabs buddy, that kind of stuff. Now, because of the previous buddy meta, all those heroes were not so good, so they buffed those heroes by lowering their buddy tier, which also meant that ETC could now get them on tier 2. So you could have all the benefit of these strong buddies without the downside of being weak early, because you can just standard curve as ETC right now, or at least until this patch. You stay on tier 2, you hero power on tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, and you just standard curve where you level on tier 5. And your board is just like bonkers minions, right? You have a little KT and an Epic Egg on turn 4 maybe. So you're generating like 2 extra cards per turn. Your board fills up in no time. You have so much money. You're strong. You're rich. You can power level. Yeah. So ETC was extremely good. I don't think he's unplayable or anything after this, but he goes a little bit more back to where he used to be, where it was, okay, you have to take a bit of a chance to go 3-on-3, or if you're gonna standard curve, you have to accept that your buddies are significantly worse that you can pull. I do hope that they bump up his armor a little bit again after this, because they did do a pretty drastic armor change. So yeah, we'll see about that. Then low has been temporarily removed. I don't know what that's about. Could be a bug, could be that he's just too bad. I don't think so. I don't think they generally remove heroes for being too bad, because a lot of bad heroes are still in the game. So I'm guessing there was some kind of bug with him. Oh, this is great. So Murloc Holmes was, I think, the only hero that still generated an old coin, so not a tavern coin, and that has been changed now. So that's a huge deal. Tavern coins will proc Nala, Plankwalker, Hooktail, so that makes Murloc Holmes significantly better. It was already a pretty good hero, so that's just nice. Jailer now only gets his hero power on tier 2. That is a very, very big nerf. Like, that is not to be underestimated. Because right now, the only reason you take Jailer is because on turn 1, you can buy Bonehead, and on turn 2, you can destroy the Bonehead, getting another Bonehead and generating triples. You can't do that anymore. So if you get a Bonehead on turn 1, fair, you can still play that, and then on turn 2 you level, and on turn 3 you kill off the Bonehead, you get 2 1/1s instead and another Undead. Fine, but if you don't get a Bonehead on turn 1, it's like, normally you can just stay on tier 1 an extra turn, right? And you can even roll for the Bonehead, but this is, yeah. We're gonna have an armor buff on Jailer as well, because Jailer was pretty low armor before they made this change, so they're buffing Jailer's armor a bit after this as well. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'll probably try it once or twice. And we also have the nerfs on the Carapace build, so that also hurts Jailer, because Jailer very often just went Carapace, because, you know, whenever Jailer is in, Undead are in, obviously, so you could always play Carapace. So yeah, I'm not sure about this one. It's a big nerf, right? Not to be underestimated. Then we have Rakanishu, giving spells an extra 1/1, and then after 4 turns, it's an extra 1/1. Okay, so on turn 4 and turn 8, right? So I guess on the Greater Time Warp, I have 3/3 to spells. That's kind of like the banana, yeah. I'm curious about this. My intuition is that it doesn't matter that much, where I'm not happy to play a Rakanishu, but it is significant, right? Like when you look at the spell power, like 1/1 and then don't do anything anymore, or, you know, having 3/3 by the time the Greater Time Warp happens. That's a real difference. The issue is that it's specific to builds, right? So you'd have to play Magic Fin, you'd have to play Fauna, you have to play Carapace. And generally speaking, the heroes that do that, they're not great on average, because you don't want to be like turn one, okay, I have to play a spell power build, because that just drastically limits the number of things you can hit to be happy about your hero. So I don't think he's a good hero now. I might try it like once if I'm really unhappy with my other choices, but yeah, not too hopeful about this. Then we got Raynor with a lot of buffs. So this is just going to be a bit of a list of all the stuff. We're not going to go in depth, but you know, he gets like more attack from 5 to 6. And then the last one is 32 to 40. Again, 32 to 40. From 30 to 40, we have more attack to the board. That one is quite significant, right? Because that's like, if early on, +2 attack instead of 1 attack, that's a huge buff. Death Rattle here is still 1/1, 2/2, but then it becomes yeah, so a little bit of a buff at the end. I don't know what happened here, because 2, 2, 3, whatever. Anyways, more Death Rattle buffs. I don't think that matters again. Like, I feel like Raynor was really something you had to play with his buddy and bounty pirates. I think without that support, it's just I'm buying spells from the shop and I don't have that much money and it feels a bit slow. Again, I'll try it, right? But intuitively, I think I would still rather just play a different hero and play Acid Rain, or, you know, any of the other like higher tier comps. Now they did get nerfs, so who knows? Maybe the Raynor buffs and the top tier comp nerfs is enough to make you want to play with the Battlecruiser. We'll see. Then we have Time Warp Hunter removed. That's just because it's not a good card and not a popular card, and they do that quite often, where if no one's picking it, they just remove it, because it just makes the game less fun if you constantly get offered cards you're not going to take anyway. And then Probius out makes sense because Apexis is back, and it's pretty toxic, where if you have an Apexis on your board, it's instant golden Apexis. Even at buffing one mech, that would still go pretty hard. Like, you would still go very fast if you have an instant golden Apexis. Deus is 50% less likely to be offered. Now, I think that is fair, because this is a neutral card. You see it quite a lot, and it's so flexible. If you play Battle Cries, it's good. If you play Death Rattles, it's good. If you play Rallies, it's good. If you play all three, it's broken. So it's one of those things where, you know, it's kind of a no-brainer, where it's almost no board is going to be like, you know, I can't find a use for a Deus, right? Almost every board is going to be like, oh, double Battle Cry, that's good. Or double Death Rattle, that's good. Double Rally, lesser, that's mainly Macaw and, you know, News Out to some extent. But it was just one of those cards that you see it, you take it, because it's like, okay, it's going to be good. And then we have Time Warp Silver coming back. I don't care for this, right? This is not good enough. Okay, cool. Like, I can have 2 times on my Battle Cries, Death Rattles, or Rallies, or I can get +8/+8 and repeat for every golden minion, right? It's just pretty funny. They're next to each other like this. All right. Then we have the Time Warp Big Winner is now every 3 turns. Okay, that is a real nerf. This card is probably still good. Because a big reason why you take this is that you have a reasonable chance of taking Steal the Shop for your first one. And getting Steal the Shop at that stage of the game, right? This is turn 6, so that's the 8 gold turn. It's so good, because if you're already on 4, you can just roll for a good shop and steal it. If you're still on tier 3, you can level and spend your 1 or 2 gold that you have left over rolling and just steal a tier 4 shop. Also just insanely good. And if you don't get it, you have a chance to make a golden unit, which is a 5-drop right away, which is also very good at that stage of the game. You can get the card that just discovers a 5-drop, also very good. In some cases, maybe bananas, right? If you have something like Peggy and you add a bunch of cards to your hand, it's quite a big tempo boost, but generally speaking, you want to get the Steel Shop or the things that get you a triple or a golden minion. But yeah, getting it a turn, it is a real nerf, right? It is a real nerf. I will definitely still pick this. I'll definitely play around with it, see, okay, how much do I dislike it now that it's much slower? But for the most part, it's that first one that's the really big impactful one, where you get the Steel Shop. So probably still very pickable, this thing. This thing is now a 10-6. I don't care, right? The problem is that there's no economy spellcrafts. That's the issue, right? So I cannot get excited for this, because it's going to fill my hand with spellcrafts, and why do I care? It's I know it sounds a little weird, but it's just, before you could have a Silivos spellcraft, and now you're like, ooh, if I go to 6 with this thing, suddenly I'm discovering spells. That's not bad. You also had the coin spellcraft. That was pretty good. You were like, ooh, I could just get money. But right now, like, okay, I'll get, I mean, deep blue, right? That's the only thing. If you're really, like, if you have a setup for deep blue, you could take this, like, let's say on turn 5, you would have to triple into a deep blue. So, like, you know you have it. And then on turn 6, this thing gets offered. And you're like, okay, sure, I'll take it because it might get me more deep blues. But even then, it's not a guaranteed pick. So I just can't get excited for this card. It's just, yeah, random spellcrafts don't do it for me. Embomber is a 10-10 instead of a 9-9. That's whatever, right? It's like a 1 stat point thing. But they change it so that when you play a magnetic, it should also work, which is a good change. Because playing or summoning are 2 different things, and a magnetic technically doesn't get played on the board. It's a summon. So now let's say if you have a Noyo module in your hand and you put it on a mech, and it's the first thing you play, that mech will now get reborn. So that's just, you know, a good change, I would say. Elise is from 4 rolls to 5 rolls. I think that's very fair. You guys may not have caught it, but we currently have the World Championships being played, where the qualifiers happened in January, and we're gonna have the well, this month really, and we're gonna have the finals happening on February 1st. So make sure to tune in for that. That's gonna be on my Twitch and my YouTube. And even if you miss it, there'll be a VOD of the live stream, or you can catch up on the qualifiers. But the reason I bring that up is when we saw the Chinese players who were very, very, very good, they all insta-picked Elise, almost regardless of the board state, which is like yoink. And ever since I started doing that, I've gotten a lot better games. And turns out randomly making golden 4 and golden 5 drops is pretty damn good. Who knew? But sometimes you have to see someone do it and just repeatedly just get crazy boards with it. You're like, okay, I guess I should be picking this more often. So yeah, turning this into 5 rolls instead of 4 rolls seems very fair. Now, it is a bit of a fragile card, so you do need to play it properly, where you can't always take it if you, like, let's say, only have a few minions on your board and you're low HP, because, you know, when you play the Elise, you probably want to proc it on the first turn. So that's, you know, you roll 4 times out of your 8 gold that you have, and then you buy the golden card, and then you have 1 gold left over. So even with this nerf, on turn 6, you can still get the Elise on the board if you're already on tier 4, right? That's a big change. So you want to be on tier 4 when you take this. Then you roll 5 times out of your 8 gold, and then you buy it. And then for 8 gold, you're essentially getting a golden 4-drop, very likely, and could be a 3-drop, and a 5-drop discovery. So that's not a bad investment if you think about it, especially if you hit a relevant 4-drop, then suddenly you're getting like a lot of gold worth, right? Like if you have a good golden 4-drop. So yeah, really, really nice card, especially if you've already gone to tier 4. So yeah, long story short, justified nerf. Jazzer is now going to 2 health. Yeah, I think that's desperately needed. This thing was a joke where I had to pay 2 chronums to get a Jazzer that would give me 1 health on death rattle. So basically like a reverse Piper, and I have to pay 2 chronums for this. Yeah, that sounds like a horrible deal. Let me just have a reverse Piper, and instead of 3 gold, I have to pay 2 chronums. Yeah, let's not. So I can confidently say I've never ever picked this. And with 2 health, honestly, I mean, I would have to have a really, really specific setup. So you'd already need a macaw on your board. You would definitely need to have to be leading quills, have some kind of setup for it. But yeah, I'm not super excited about this. Now, the Time Warp Geomancer change, on the other hand, goes from Avenge 2, get a Blood Gem, to Avenge 5, get a Blood Gem, and your Blood Gems give an extra 1/1 this game. That is a huge buff, right? So now we are talking +1/+1 on our gems, and you are getting a Blood Gem. And if you have a good board, you can technically proc it twice, but this is like very hard to do. It's like full Undead, Reborns, and lots of tokens. But with the Time Warp Recycler, which is also Avenge 5, you sometimes got 2 procs, so it's definitely possible. So yeah, massive change. Huge buff to this card for sure. Talking about the Recycler, going from 5 to 4, which is great. I already picked this a decent amount of the time because it's oil. But with the proper Undead board, this was not hard to proc once, and a reasonable amount of the time, right? You could get twice, because when you have this kind of card, you're probably not gonna have like a super Undead milking board. But with this card, you got it more often, right? You were offered this because you already had Undead on your board, so you already had Bonehead and Risen Rider and stuff. So it was feasible to get it twice. Now with Avenge 4, it's actually very possible, right, to get double proc. So that's a fun change. Whelp goes from 2 to 3. I don't care. I just hate when people have this and they randomly snipe my backline Avengers. But I feel like I'm just griefing if I take this because I feel like it, you know, it doesn't do that much. I'm not going to be playing a lot of dragons unless I have a Veil, but a Veil is like 2 Chronum, I think. So you can't really combo this with Veil, and I don't know. It's just weird. Like there's almost no circumstance where I'm playing a lot of dragons. So like in the mid game, that very rarely happens. So I don't know. I don't like this. Time Warp Jelly is 2/2 now instead of 1/2. Yeah, I think it's like a lot of the time you can compare this to something like the Time Warp Pillager, I think it's called. It's the Undead's creation that gives you a coin and then reborns and gives you another coin. That is so much better, like 2 gold per turn instead of just some stat boosts. Because you can use that gold to level easier, to get bigger cards, to get, let's say, a Carapace online or so, which is so much better than this kind of buffing. So, but on the right board, if you already have 2 reborns, then I could see taking this and just be strong and level like that. That's also a possibility. Yeah, not overly excited about it. Then we have Whelp Smuggler returning. So now whenever a friendly minion gains attack, give it 3 health. I don't know what this combos with right now, because you used to have that tier 3 dragon elemental thing that gained a lot of health because it gained a lot of damage end of turn. Now, without that in the game, I just don't know what you use a Whelp Smuggler for. So maybe just let me know in the comments if you guys have good uses for this, like things that happen all the time, but I didn't really take it before, and I don't imagine I'm going to be taking it a lot right now. And Time Warp Seer is back as well. It's now a 9/9. 1 Tavern spell costs 0. It's okay economy, but again, compared to something like the Pillager that just gives you 2 guaranteed coins per turn, so much more flexible. Because with the Time Warp Seer, you need to have a spell that you want to buy. And especially if you have something like Careful Investment in the shop, or the book with the free rerolls, and you kind of want to buy that, but you don't really want to do it because then you waste your charge on a 1-cost spell, and then you keep rolling, and then you never find a good spell, and it's like, it's awkward, right? It's not really guaranteed money. It's like maybe money, right? And I will take guaranteed money over maybe money, like, you know, any day of the week. So now that doesn't mean that you can't have cool setups with this, but most of the time it's just better to get some guaranteed coins or economy like that. Now, talking about some guaranteed money, we have a very, very fun change to Time Warp Tipper. It's now a 2 Chronum card. If you have unspent gold at the end of your turn, increase your maximum gold by 1. So the old one here you can see is when you have unspent gold, you get a random minion and tavern spell. Now for 1 gold, you get an oil, guaranteed. Instantly cast it as well, right? It's not an oil in your hand. So next turn, you're already going to have the extra gold. You can milk that for a while, right? Because you could think about the recycler giving you maybe an oil. This is 1 gold for guaranteed oil. I'm not sure yet. I will have to try it for sure. Like with most things, you have to try it. But yeah, I mean, you could probably float a gold for like 2 or 3 turns and then, you know, get like 3 extra oils. That's not bad. That's almost like a greater Time Warp, right? Like the 3 or 4 oils straight away. So yeah, let's definitely excited to give that a try. Then we got the new Time Warp Bacon Relaxer. After you sell a quill board, it's now placed 3 blood gems on a random friendly minion instead of 2. So this is also back. This, yeah, I sell a quill board, I play 3. Yeah, I'd have to be buying quill board again. Like that's just like it's like that whelp, right? Like in the mid game, I don't want to be buying a bunch of dragons here. Also, I don't want to be buying a bunch of quill board, much less like sell them afterwards to get like. What are we doing? I don't know. Feels weird. But again, Jazzer is on 2 now, so it is more likely that you have some gem buffs, but it's so rare in the mid game that I'm be like, oh yeah, now I'm gonna cycle like some cool bore and get some gems on my. I wanna be improving my comp, right? I wanna be rolling. I wanna get good 4 drops. I wanna triple, get a 5 drop and stuff. I don't wanna be cycling random cool board to get some gems on my board. Overfiend has been buffed from 3/3 to 4/4. I'm never really happy with this. I think I picked it like once or twice and I'm just kind of disappointed. It's hard to buy a lot of cards. You gotta have a lot of economy ready. It's a greater Time Warp, right? So you can't combine it with a lot of other greater Time Warps, because if you had Time Warp Malchezaar, so let's say you're Murazont and you can combine it with Time Warp Malchezaar, You could make a case for it because a lot of your spells are going to be free and the spell is a card. So then your demons will get buffed every time you buy a spell, which happens frequently with Time Warp Malchezaar. So sure, but other than that, it's like, okay, I need like Golden Brand or something. But when I have Golden Brand, I probably have better uses for my board than +4/+4. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird card. And then we have Nomi Pog, changing from 3/2 to 4/3, which I unfortunately think does not matter because we do not play elementals in that fashion. We play elementals by buffing the rightmost minion in the tavern, and Nomi doesn't do that. Nomi buffs everything, but there's not that much use to buffing everything except for like, oh, I'm gonna buy like Nuzaos or Pirate Cleaves straight out of the shop and then triple them and be huge. But we play elementals with Acid Rain, and then Acid Rain only cares about the rightmost. So it's kind of like you're wasting a lot of resources here because it's harder to buff the rightmost using this strategy than to just have a Revenant on the board or a Rylak with an Engine Blazer next to it. So I think Nomi just suffers from that, where right now the way how we play elemental, we don't care about a global buff to the tavern. We only care about buffing the right side. So it's just a bit awkward right now. Nomi is a very awkward spot in this meta. 3 attack to 4 attack on the Stomper. I don't think that changes too much. I think this is a card that we take when we're just not too happy with what else we can do, and we're just taking some tempo and we're aiming for like a top 2, top 3 kind of position. You can still win after taking a Stomper, don't get me wrong, but it's generally not the case. You're generally not going like, ooh, I'm gonna win with Stomper comp. Now you can do some kind of APM beast type stuff where you have the brand, you cycle the Tiger Shark, and then you are summoning a lot of minions. You're playing like Reef Explorer, that's also a lot of minions. So there's definitely ways where you can get a lot of procs here, but just having attack generally doesn't really cut it. If you have a lot of attack, it's got to be like undead attack, so that when my spawns also have the damage. And that's not the case here, right? You're going to have a very high damage minion, but if there's a death rattle attached to it, that's not going to be high damage. And versus other things, you don't have any health, so it's like, you know, you can't really value trade. So it's just a bit of a weird card where you just take it, you get a bunch of tempo, you try to just eliminate some players fast because you have maybe some Divine Shields with a lot of damage, and that's good enough. But it's hard to win the lobby from that spot. Murgler gets changed from adjacent minions to adjacent Murlocs, so it's harder to just buff a cleave with this or a shield, so fair, I guess. It's not like I use this card a lot, but it's pretty user-friendly. If you're already playing Murlocs, if you already have a Bream, it's pretty easy to keep making a bigger minion in your hand, and then Murgler is a lot of tempo on your board, so probably okay with that change. Greasebot gets nerfed from 3/3 to 2/2. That's not for high MMR, I'll tell you that. Well, again, high MMR. I'll say in my lobbies, Greasebot is not oppressive, right? Greasebot is not present. But it's a very, very easy to play card, right? I plop it on my board, I put some Divine Shields, and I lay back, I relax, and the board gets bigger. There's no APM, there's not really that much decision making. I just gotta chill, and my board gets huge. And I can see how that is too strong in a lot of lobbies. But again, the higher up you go, the more you climb, the more people, they just want economy and they just use their resources to get much better buffs than this type of buffing. But okay, it's fair. It's you know, I don't care basically. Again, let me know, guys. Let me know in the comments, right? Have you seen a lot of Greasebot in your lobbies? Is this a thing that's frustrating? You lose to it all the time? Yeah, I'm guessing they have stats on this, right, where they see that it's winning too much. So that's the only real reason why they would nerf it. Nala. Now this is a card that gets played all the time. It's incredibly good because it's very easy to generate a lot of spells with good economy. Again, Visionary Shipment is fantastic with this brand, but it's also any spell. So you can even do something like play the little Oozling Gladiator with a brand and get 4 or maybe even 6 shields in your hand when you've got the golden brand. That's 6 spells for the Nala. It just goes, you know, buffing Nuzao with this is super good. You can Wind Fury it. If you got a George Hero Power, you can Divine Shield it. If you got a Glow Scale, you can Divine Shield it. Very, very powerful, very strong. This is a mid-game powerhouse. So they're changing it from 4/4 to 4/3. So I think that's very fair. Most of the time, you don't really end the game playing Time Warp Nala, but you get incredibly safe, incredibly strong in the mid game, and then you switch to something like Weaver and you start buffing your Undead, and then you keep that Nuzao maybe that you've been buffing, and now you have a huge Nuzao and a bunch of very high attack Undead in the late game, or Evoker and the same thing with a Stun Drake, right? It's a very, very safe, very, very strong pick. So a lot of the time, if you have a way to generate spells, Time Warp Nala is a fantastic pick on turn 9, because it's just gonna almost guarantee that you're gonna top 4, because you're gonna stop losing fights almost like that, because as long as you cast a bunch of spells that turn, your board just gets huge. Like, you're talking a lot of buffs. And then if you have the option to, you know, switch into a good late game build, then you can also win the lobby after taking Nala. So excellent, excellent pick. So very understandable that it gets nerfed. Clefttooth is now +2/+2 and deal 1 damage 3 times. Completely irrelevant, I think. I think I've picked this card once and I was just like, why? It's so bad. You can't really play Drakari when you're playing like self-damage beast. I think the only way to play this kind of beast comp is you have Panther, you have like Rylak with the Tiger Shark, and you just spam a bunch of beasts, and then this doesn't really matter. Like, okay, like, because then you need Skyblazer and you need Lasher on your board, and that's also harder to do, because generally when you're playing the Panther build, the main beast that matters is Nuzao, so you want to be buffing that. So you might have like one Skyblazer or one Lasher on your board, so you don't really care that much. So yeah, awkward card in the current meta. I don't recommend taking this very often. Interpreter gets changed from 3/2 to 3/3. Sure, I mean, for 2 Chronums, that's way overpriced for, again, my experience. Maybe if you have like crazy good volumizer generation and you just like give your mechs the buffs, but this just gives you a buff. It doesn't give you a magnetization. Now, I'm not saying it should, because that's probably broken, right? It's too easy to get a bunch of magnetizations, but then you could say, oh, you can then stack this with utility drone, and that's like really good and you get huge. But just giving a flat 3/3 every time I magnetize or play a mech, like maybe if I'm playing this arena build and I need to desperately add some health to my board, maybe, right? Like, sure, I could do that. I could have his arena board, play this, module it, it's now divine shielded, and then, I'll generate some magnetics. Maybe I have a Bran and I play all the tier 2 things, the tier 3 mech that generates volumizers on Battlecry. I'm blanking on the name, but that I can see, but it's so niche specific. I don't know. I'm not a fan of this card. Time Warp Promo Drake is back, and it now gives 5/5 to your minions, and at the end of the turn improve this. Okay, man, this is a huge change. Not saying it's good now, right? But it was like unplayable. It was give your minions +2/+2 start of combat, so not even permanent, right? So we're talking a temporary +2/+2 buff, and then after I spend 5 gold, I get to give it +4/+4 at the start of the combat. Like, talk about unplayable. Now it's 5/5, and without having to spend gold, it improves immediately. So I can take this, and then it's 5/5 again, and then 5/5 again. I could technically have Drakari on the board, but again, right? Like, when am I gonna play this? Never, I think. Like, I'm just thinking of board states where I would want this. Nah. Yeah, like poets, you need poets desperately. Drakari with Ignition Specialist on your board and like double poet, and I'm just like, okay, I guess I'll take this, right? But that's a tough ask, right? Turn 9, I need to have a Drakari, an Ignition Specialist, and 2 poets. Like, what are we doing here, right? Maybe if I have the Chronum boost and I have 3 Chronums this turn and I get offered the poets to make permanent changes, I think that's 1 Chronum at least. So you can at least combo these. But yeah, it's unlikely to say the least. Pretty tricky to fit this in the board. Then we have some buffs here. All of these 2 Chronum cards are going to 1 Chronum, which makes sense because I don't pick any of these almost ever. I think I've picked Time Warp Upstart twice because I had some tier 3 elementals that already buffed the right side, and it was a giant bait both times. Card did not do enough. Too slow, too awkward, couldn't really keep it on my board, was already hurting the development. Like, when you're doing this, your rightmost side is generally going to get big enough. It's all about being good in the combat early and having economy, and like this just, it's too awkward. So from my experience, yeah. So at 1 Chronum, maybe, right? Because sometimes you have a good 1 Chronum card and you'll just take something as a second thing. right? Like that happens. You just have something you want, and then like, okay, this is just my bonus card that I take. And now we might see these 3 cards being picked. But before at 2 chronums, I could just not recommend any of them being picked in almost any scenario. And then the last change is you can no longer get the Time Warp Lay Buddy on Crag, which is fair. Well, it's unfair really, because I've had this like 2 or 3 times, and yes, you can go to tier 6 because you have a lot of money, you find eyes, now you have triple the gold of everyone else, right? And sometimes more because the piggy bank keeps accruing. It's silly. It's silly good. So yeah, that is a huge nerf to Crag, because that was the main reason you took Crag. You take Crag, you hope to get the Panda Buddy, and if you get the Panda Buddy, it's not really a free win, but pretty close to, because you have so much money, right? So as long as you don't fumble from that spot, you kind of just win. It's very good. So very fair change. All right, guys, that was all the changes. That was a big patch. I hope you guys enjoyed that. As always, please let me know in the comments anything I missed, you disagree with, or just general cool stuff that you want to share. Let me know. I do read each and every single comment. Until next time, have a good one.